Yeah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and Ramadan Mubarak. With Allah's name, the merciful, benefactor, the merciful Redeemer, I bear witness there is no God but Allah. I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, the servant of Allah. I want to revisit the second hadith in the book called this book called the 40 Hadiths. Some say it's based on Hadith Quds, which Quds means holy. We want to revisit today Hadith number 2. And I'll read it in English. Might be a little bit of Arabic, not too much. On the authority of Umar, radiallahu anhu. One day, it says, one day, while we were sitting with the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessing be upon him, there appeared before us a man whose clothes were exceedingly white and whose hair was exceedingly black. No signs of journeying were to be seen on him, and none of us knew him. He walked up and sat by the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, resting his knees against his and placing the palm of his hand on his thighs. Then he said, O Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, فَأَكْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِسْلَامِ. Tell me about Islam. The Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an Muhammadan Rasulullah, wa iqam as-salat, wa ita' az-zakat, wa sawmi Ramadan, wa hajj al-bayt. So he essentially said the 5 essentials, 5 pillars that we all know. The person then said, you have spoken correctly. The companions were amazed at, who is this person coming up here, asking the Prophet a question, then turning around and saying, yeah, that's almost saying, are you correct? So he asked a second question. He said, Akbirni and Iman. Tell me about Iman. So again, a messenger said, it is to testify that there is no God but Allah, and the articles of faith. You know, the articles of faith. They believe in the books, the angels, the messenger, and all. And he again said, you're correct. Right. And then it comes to the third one. He says, then tell me about ihsan. And we know ihsan is to believe in Allah even though you don't see him. You don't see him, but know that he sees you. So, again, the stranger, as they thought he was, said, you have spoken correctly. So he gets to one, he says, tell me about the hour. And the messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said, the one being questioned knows no more than the questioner. He said, well then tell me about its signs, the signs of the hour. And so the Prophet said that on that day you shall see that the slave girl will give birth to her mistress, and that you will see the barefooted, naked, destitute herdsmen competing, constructing lofty buildings. When he said that, he looked around and this questioner was gone. So the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, well, do you know who that was? And he eventually told him it was Jibreel who came to teach you your religion. Now, this was just a confirmation for Ummah and what other companions who were there. But for us, it's saying a whole lot and it's saying a little bit. In the little bit it's saying when someone asks you to tell them about Islam, do like the Prophet did. Recite the Shahada. Tell them about the Shahada. Tell them about prayer. Tell them about fasting. Tell them about charity, and finally about pilgrimage. And they may take it further by saying, okay, well, can you kind of explain this one or that one or all of them? So you may be there a little longer doing some doubt. The other part is for us to know, or as a confirmation, that Shahadatain, we all take it. And for the new people, when you take the Shahada, you come into a whole new orientation. Your past life is like forgiven. It's like a whole clean slate, start all over again. And then you want to know, well, what do I do next? Pray. Offer your salats. You do it 5 times a day. So you explain that to the person as well. We have a prayer before the sunrise. We have a prayer just after the zenith, in the middle of the day, just after this, never at the zenith, just after the zenith. We have one at Asr prayer, which is like almost like 45 degrees. Then you have one when the sun sets, which is called the Maghrib prayer. And you have one before you retire at night, the Isha prayer. This is what the message confirmed for us, that if we're going to share the religion, we should start with that. If somebody asks us, that's what we should start with. We shouldn't come from our own, well, Islam is like this. And just go on and on, or go rambling on, because we have a guide. And if we're not going to come from the Quran, we're only cheating ourselves, because we know we don't have anything. We really don't have anything. When we understand the Quran and the life example of Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him, we know we don't have anything. I mean, we might be pursuing our little individual paths, to each is a goal to which he turns. But when it comes to something as meaningful as this message, we know we don't have anything. So it's best that we say it just like the Prophet said it, as close as we can, and to try to see what Allah has given us in the Quran. Try to see through the lens of the Quran. I mean, if we don't, we will constantly be looking at the glamour and the glitz of what the enemy of all mankind has created for us. The glamorous environment. And don't get me wrong, Allah's environment, the natural environment, is good. But we have somebody who have embellished things. And if we don't get back to what Allah is offering us, we could easily be invited to that and not gain what's available to us, not get what's available to us. So we want to try to see things through the eyes of the Quran. We say Prophet Muhammad was the Quran living, was the Quran walking. Well, then that means he didn't look at things the way you look at them or the way I look at them. He had to see things through this lens, the lens of the Quran. The lens of what Allah is saying in the Quran, Allah, what the angel Jibreel taught him. That's why when he told the angel the 5 essentials, Umar and the other companions who were there were blown away by who is this guy coming up asking the prophet. You know, Umar, he had that attitude like he was ready. At one time, he had that attitude, he was ready to take you out. And it was a religion that really humbled him. This knowledge humbled him. And in other instance, you know, it is reported that I think it was his sister was talking to somebody or listening to somebody, you know, and he heard about it, and he just went off, and I think he was just like ready to hurt somebody, for lack of a better expression. So this message humbled him, right? And he became one of the biggest supporters in that time. So this message, the Quran, no falsehood can approach it. And for us, we just need to reflect on these things. You know, no falsehood can approach it from before it or behind. It is a revelation from the wise, the owner of peace, the owner of praise. That's why we say Allah is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Not just Rahman and Rahim. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. You put the definite article on there, it's definite. And it's his. It's not just anybody's. So when we reflect on the fact that it can't be approached by anything or anybody, for example, from before it, which is meaning in front of it. It means that none can prove it wrong. That should be open to prove stuff. It's like witnessing. But none can do that. Right? And from behind may suggest some subtlety or some deception, right? Means they may try to get one over on you, you know, from behind. But even that, nothing can be discovered until the end of time to disprove the message. I mean, you read about archaeologists, these excavations and things that they are finding. Some people are trying to disprove this by going way back, digging up stuff to try to disprove this message. It's not going to happen. Allah said it's not going to happen. They can try. With jinn and men, it's not going to happen. No new science. In science, they have this new telescope that can see way out there. I think it's Hubble. I think it's called the Hubble telescope. No new science can put forth anything to prove this wrong. No new science. They can advance, offer, propose, suggest, or even vote on anything that suggests that the Quran is not sufficient, because it is. And I don't mean just for our time. Allah sent this message to the end of time. There's no more coming after this. We have example that Allah is not going to send us another example, because it says it here. Let's go new observations to prove that the guidance in the Quran isn't sufficient. And it just so happened that there are people who believe this. This is why we say this. There are people that believe that they can disprove this, and they put resources and manpower behind it to try to prove that they can disprove this. It's not going to happen. You know, it will be a waste. So that which Allah has declared to be truth can never be proven to be false. Even though the shaitan may try, and he is the most clever of presenters. He is the most, nobody's more clever than the shaitan. So we don't want to sleep on him, but we're not going to worry about him because Allah is Akbar. Allah takes care of us. That which the Quran has declared to be falsehood can never be true. There are things in the Quran right now that people don't like because it indicts them. They want to change that. But it's not going to happen. Right? I mean, if you read some of the stories of some of the people and what they have done, you don't want to be seen like that. Well, you shouldn't have done it. Because it's not going to change. I mean, it's here for us to know that anybody could be like that. It just so happens to have a name that you claim. You claim to be so-and-so these people, and it's an indictment. Well, you got to live with it. Because from my history, my little teeny history, my history tells me that the name that you claim, you stole it from people who don't even look like you. Totally different ethnic group. But yet you want it. So now you got to bear the brother that you stole. So, whether falsehood makes a frontal attack or makes a surprise attack by deception. Deception is big too. You know, I put on my phone and a YouTube clip came up where this police officer stopped this guy dressed in his tuxedo and a top hat and everything. The dude was a magician. He asked the officer, "Would you like to buy some marijuana?" So the officer thought that it was real. He put it in the officer's hand, and it just baffles me that all of a sudden what came out of the bag was some creature. So I'm saying that to say that deception, people know how to trick the eye. That's an old science. Pharaoh had people doing it from the beginning of time, and it's today. People today have perfected it. And they've gotten so good at it today, it'll take a minute to figure out how they did it. But this says, so whether falsehood makes a frontal attack or attack from the rear. And from the rear is mostly something that you don't see, is deception. You know, it cannot defeat the message of Al-Islam. Cannot defeat the message that Allah has put in the Quran for all mankind. And we have been given the chance to be the Khalifa, to bring this message, to help establish it. Not as an individual so much, because we're taught that the term Khalifa being directed to individuals is inappropriate, and Emir is more appropriate than Khalifa for the individual. The community could be the Khalifa, but not so much the individual. And I know in history, they have thrown it out casually, calling this man's a Khalifa, this is a Khalifa, this is a Khalifa, right? They even says it in here, the first 5 Caliphs, right? But we're taught that term is not so much an individual, it's more a community because of the responsibility of it. So, in spite of all sorts of secret machinations of the opponents, the message will spread and continue. And we see that right now throughout the country, how people are coming to this message. I think we just had somebody to accept this way of life recently. And throughout the states, people are coming in numbers, big numbers. And they're going to continue to come. This is not our doing. This is Allah's doing. So the moment we realize that, the better off we are. And the more we align ourselves with it as the representative aligned himself, the better we will be as well. when we think about this message, it seems like it's voluminous. It is voluminous, very big. But you can shrink it down to capsulized forms. From Adam to Muhammad, you can shrink that whole message down to capsulized forms. And what is the message? The main thing is La ilaha illallah. Right? And when you read the account of Prophet Ibrahim, how he searched the heavenly bodies and come to the conclusion that none of them are God because they all set. He just said that. So, and his conclusion was that I believe in the one behind all of that. All of that. The stars, marvelous thing, but they set. My God doesn't set. The moon rises in splendor when it's full, but it sets. My God doesn't set. Right? And the sun, one of the most marvelous ones of them all, rises and what? Sets. Abraham concluded that, the one behind it all, that's the one that we serve. And that's the one that we want to be aware of. That's why I say from Adam to Muhammad, we can capsulize it. We can put it in a capsule form, and bam, we got it. And can convince anybody who has a sound and decent mind that all of the prophets were directing you towards the same thing. One God. They may have been in different stages, right? But if you read the accounts of what are in the Quran about the prophets and their message, you will see that those messages from each of those prophets were directing you towards a higher power, one higher source. And if you study, we're taught that if you study these prophets, you will see something in relation to yourself, because they're typical of us. What's in us, in other words. They're types. They're character types. And you may see your character type in Harun. You may see your character type in Ibrahim. So they have something that we can relate to. We just need to understand them, put them in their proper perspective. And this is a good time, this month of Ramadan, where things are intense for us in terms of study and prayer, and we probably need more conversation amongst us to discuss things. But between studying on our own, praying, this is a time to question things. It is said that this is the time during the month of Ramadan to get your questions about the Quran or Islam. So if the more we get that going as well, we can see even more added to our. I'm not ready to say faith, but it can help us. And when we realize that from Adam to Muhammad, that message is that simple. I mean, and I don't mean to try to trivialize when I say simple, because it's not simple at all in that sense. But it's not hard to grasp what I'm saying. In that sense, it's simple. From Adam, the first type, to Muhammad, the last. The message, and if you while you're reading the Quran, if you can step outside of what you're reading and try to assess the whole thing, the whole juz, for example, the whole juz. It seems like it's a lot in there, but it's probably just one thing. Probably just one thing. So sometimes it takes trying to step outside of comfort zone or the view that I have to see if I can see the big picture. If somebody asked me to define the Quran, you should be able to do it. To define, what is the Quran? That's what they're saying. Define the Quran. What is it? Right? I mean, you know just from the attributes what the Quran is. It is the final revelation for one, and a host of other things, right? This is what I mean when I say, let's give it as it was given by Prophet Muhammad and some of the early companions. So, after understanding the message from Adam to Muhammad and how congruent it is, even though there were different eras, if you want to zero in on the ethnicity of some of these characters, you would be surprised. That's your style. You can do that if you want. But if you did, you would be surprised. It is obvious in the Quran that a lot of what we read, a lot of what Allah has revealed, has been tarnished and painted. In other words, there's been a deliberate attempt to keep you from seeing you in it. There's been a deliberate attempt to keep you from seeing you in here. So, inshallah, we will get to this because we have to pass this knowledge on. We can't keep it to ourselves. We have to pass it to those coming behind us. Like pass the baton, you run, pass the baton so the next person can take it. And some people may think this is racial, right? But when things have been so tarnished, it's far from racial. Things have been so tarnished. And we shouldn't feel the criticism of the criticizer who says, well, that has a racial connotation. You know? But just think about it. If you know anything about history, some of these people that we read about, you know where they're coming from, you know who they're marrying, the tribe and the lineage that they come from. That's telling us something right there. Okay? Even to know, when we read about the questioning, constantly questioning everything with the children of Israel, questioning Moses, you know, disagreeing with everything he said, always had an excuse, always questioning something. If we understand that, we have that attitude. We have that attitude. It's nope. We don't look at us like that, but we have that attitude. So, with Allah's name, we're just trying to understand the best route. We have an example. If we would devote some time to truly trying to understand the example, that would help us tremendously. But too many of us don't, myself included. I got hang up, like we were talking earlier. All of us have things that during this month of Ramadan we want to improve. Did you know that we are like an overseer? You know, I want to relate it to slavery. You know that we are like an overseer in our own self, because we have servants. We have servants that serve us. And if we don't treat our servants right, we can be accused. We have servants. We have hands. They serve us. They don't do what they want to do. They do what we tell them to do. These are our servants. We have feet. Right? We have eyes. These things do what we tell them to do. And quiet as is kept, or as a reminder, Allah tells us in the Quran, on that day, your servants will bear witness against you. Your limbs will bear witness against you. That's the term that they use. But they're nothing but servants. Hands are your servants. Your feet are your servants. Your eyes and mouth and ears are your servants. They do what you tell them to do. Now, who is this you? Who is this you? That's the one inside. That's the one that Allah is feeding and speaking to. So, I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time. With Allah's name, the merciful, benefactor, merciful Redeemer, I'd like to end this talk by maybe asking any questions or comments or pushback or whatever.
I had a comment. I had a question. You used the word simple. And you were reluctant to use the word simple.
Yeah.
But what attracted me to this deen in the first place was something Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in a speech that I was reading. It's called Muhammad Speak at the time. Mm-hmm. And he said, the truth is simple. God isn't trying to confuse anyone. There's no Trinity. There's no God but God. And just the simplicity, and it just like opened my eyes, like, wow. He doesn't want to confuse anybody. All the confusion. He said, the truth is simple. There's no God but God. And I thought that was, when I read it, it was just like, it changed my life. So it is simple. The truth is simple.
I was just trying to make sure I wasn't trivializing it.
Right.
I know what you were saying, but to me, it's just like when you said the word simple, I thought that's what God meant.
Yeah.
It's simple, that word.
And it can reach the high and the low. That one message can reach the high, and he can change, or she can change. It can reach the low, and he or she can change.
Did you have something to say? I was just taking notes of some things you said. Simple was one of the things that I put down. Certainly, because this message is simple. The truth is simple. What is complex and convoluted is the lie. You got to keep remembering lies, and you got to keep making excuses for them. If you say Allah is one, you don't need a whole bunch of explanation for that. If he's two or three, then you do. You're like, okay, so what does this one do? What does that one do? You know. The other thing too is that I think it may be my own prejudice, and I think some other people have that when you think about Adam, when you think about the other prophets, you think about them as being rather primitive, you know. But if you think of them that way, they were still delivering the same message, right? I was reading this article, this book by this man called God, The Search for God Throughout Humanity. And he was talking about Adam, or the first people. He said, we look at them as simple, but they were only simple in terms of technology. They didn't have a TV and a microwave, but they had the same brain capacity we did. The only reason we have TVs is because of them. You know, we kept getting more and more complicated in our technology, but they had the same brain capacity. So they understood one Allah the same way we do. So if you look at them as primitive or not as smart as you, they understood this simple thing, so you should be able to understand it too. The other thing, I told you I took a bunch of notes, but the other thing was the dawah, which was very important, as how the prophet gave dawah. And I didn't think about this. I probably have been guilty of this, just giving what I think people should know, or this segment right here, if I have some preconceived idea about them. And I feel, every time I talk to somebody I've never met before, I asked them, do you already know this? Like somebody took the Shahada on Friday after Jummah. And when people take the Shahadatain, I don't know them, so I don't know how much they know of Al-Islam. So I'm tentative about explaining too much to him. It's like, I already know this, you know. And he knew a ton of things that you would suspect some people may not already know. But in order to come here, he had to have most people have some kind of investigation. They don't just have this feeling and say, I'm going to be a Muslim, but they research it to some degree because when they go outside, they're going to have to explain it. So that the Prophet gave the 5 pillars and gave the 6 articles of faith. The other thing I wanted to mention about that is all the time we express or we emphasize al-Islam. But in that hadith, he says al-Islam, just like Allah says in the Quran, but he also says al-Iman and al-Ihsan. And the significance of that, especially to me, is that I've been in different communities before, and they say Islam, right? And they don't say al-Islam. And I asked Imam Farid about the significance of it, and I found out the significance of it. And you realize that everybody thinks they submit to the will of God, right? Everybody thinks they do. Everybody thinks they have faith. Everybody thinks they're being excellent also, right? But Allah determines what al-Islam is. Allah determines what al-Iman is, and Allah determines what al-Insan is. Not you, not all 8 billion people on earth. We can get together. We still going to be, first we're going to be indecisive about what it is, but we can't say that we are honoring Allah, submitting to Allah, if we don't go by what He says it is. So the good thing is that people are doing it to the best of their ability. Whatever they think submission is, they do that. But the submission is what Allah told us. The Iman is what Allah told us. And the excellence is what the Prophet explained in this hadith. And as soon as I saw the hadith, I had known the hadith my whole life. Mm-hmm. But when I knew about al-Islam, I was like, let me see what this hadith says. And it says al-Iman, al-Ihsan, and al-Islam.
Thing that we was going over in the Arabic session, when you put that definite article on there, right, that means something special. And it's not just a general thing. So, al-Islam, al-Quran, al-Kitab, right? Al-Ihsan, al-Iman. So, yes. So, inshallah, we were just reviewing that because we go through these things from time to time, and sometimes it's good to review. Just go back and review it, just to keep it fresh. Because doing dawah today is real good. It's real good. I have a good time when I'm doing the course of the day. I find some way to hit somebody with some of this. Not hit them hard, just hit them enough to pique their interest, or get them to look at it and say, you know what, I never thought about that. So, inshallah.
Well, also, you mentioned the new Shahada, right? Somebody just texted me while you were doing the Ta'aleem. They're supposed to come today. It's a sister and her son. They're going to take the Shahadatain, inshallah, on next Jummah. She came for a Black History Month event, so she said she was going to come. She just texted me while you were saying that.
I heard about that.
Right.
A lady came by also. She said she's coming from California. Her husband is a chaplain on the base. Mm-hmm. And she said she was coming back. But she said she used to go to Master Felix Bilal in California.
And where?
Felix Bilal in California.
Oh, okay.
With Hassan. You have Hassan?
Mm-hmm.
But so she said she was coming back. I told her that.
Oh, that was today?
Today.
Okay.
At 1. Anyway, that was it. Okay. You know, inshallah, we just wanted to review that and maybe get some conversation. I think.
Oh, so I'm sorry.
I think that in addition to, like I said, our studies and our prayers, this time of the year during this month, you know, because this is the 9th month. This is the birth month. And don't think you don't have a hand in your birth. That's why I just said, for lack of a better expression, you can have a hand in your birth. Allah's the best knower. Allah's ultimate, but He gives us this. If we do it as He laid out for us, you know, I like to liken it to people used to say that you get what you sow, you reap what you sow. I say, but in Islam, you don't reap what you sow. You reap more than what you sow. And I say that because in the Quran, it tells us about the ear of a corn. The ear of corn. You plant one seed, it gives you a stalk with 7 ears of corn on it. Each ear of corn has 100 grains. Right? The rewards are just like that. You plant one seed, you get this stalk with 7 ears. Each ear has 100 grains. You can replant them again. It's multiple rewards. So it's not like I don't accept the terminology, you reap what you sow. I believe that you get more than what you sow, especially if you're doing good. You know, the Hadith tells us if you're doing wrong, Allah says one bad deed, you have one bad mark against you. But if you're doing good, you can multiply it 7, 10, or many times more. So there's plenty of evidence to support that. And this is the kind of thing that lifts our spirits and helps us. We need to let everybody know about these things. So especially the young ones coming up. They could be some of the most brilliant minds around if we let them know. You know, there is no fear, no greed. You doing right? No fear, no greed. Not that temporarily you won't be, something won't kind of distract you, right? But no fear will be on you as a burden. No grief will be on you as a burden. And that's how we should be, because people are looking at us. No fear on you and no burden. They don't want to see you sloping all the time. You know? I mean, you might be ugly like some people. For lack of a good expression, you're not a sad person.
Yeah.
You know, somebody asks you something, you know, you're not always down in the dumps and you're always passing off negative advice. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because this message is not like that. And you can't be reading this message on a regular basis and be that way. Something's just not adding up.
Yeah.
Right?
So I have one other question. It's just probably it's a personal opinion. Mm-hmm. We were talking about the Khalifa and that we should say Amir. I've heard people talk about a Khalifa. We need a Khalifa for the Ummah. What is your opinion on that?
My studies have shown us, according to 2 classes now, that a Khalifa is not an individual. Okay, a Khalifa is the community together achieving these things, because the Khalifa cannot establish a community as an individual. And the Khalifa builds a community as people. Right? So Imam Muhammad taught on the significance of calling your leader an emir as opposed to the Khalifa. Khalifa is way big, it's a really big term. And they throw it out too loosely. You know, Khalifa this or Khalifa that. He's saying the Khalifa is the whole community. It's not just you and me. You know, they go through, the Khalifa goes through 3 stages of development, just like the individual goes through 3 stages of development. And we go through 3 stages of development, and the communities go through 3 stages of development also. But the ultimate goal of us all is to have the community. And you can't do it individually. So the individual can't take credit. So the term Khalifa applies more appropriately to the entire body, not just brother Khalifa, or our Khalifa, or Khalifa so-and-so and so.
Can you elaborate on the 3 stages of development?
Well, you got a physical stage, you got an intellectual stage, you got a spiritual. Like we were saying earlier, the servants that you have, the servant that we talked about, your hands, your feet, your eyes, nose, ears, stomach, and all that, they do what you tell them to do. Now again, who is this you? That's what Allah speaks to, the inside, the you. Some people say it's consciousness. And the example that they give is that if I was to take your consciousness out, you would drop to the floor. No consciousness. Or when you fall asleep, what happens? Your head drops. No consciousness. So those three, the ultimate is to develop your inner self. I told some people they have a soul, and they don't even know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So where are you gonna turn like that from? What you mean by that? I said the life within you. Simple. There is a life within you, isn't it? Don't you talk to yourself from time to time? That's the only thing I can make him understand. Do you talk to yourself at some point? I know that used to be a taboo thing. You talk to yourself, that nigga crazy. Right? That used to be a taboo. The culture did it. And it got people away from talking to themselves. And I don't mean like you see some people who are probably really disturbed walking down the street talking to themselves loud. I mean, real loud. And, you know, that's not what I mean. I mean, you can question things about your own life, about your own behavior, and this is the time to do it. You can question things about your beliefs. You can question things about your faith, your attitude, your relationships. And if you don't do it, believe me, the culture is going to do it. Because you are the buffer to the culture. I mean, you keep the culture out. You put your clothes on. You're clothed with this. So I hope that.
So the question now is the Amir. Should you think the community should have one Amir?
Yeah, that's still. But I did want to say something. He was talking about that, but that's still true. I still don't know what your thought is on that. But I did want to say what you were just saying before I forget it about. I don't know. But what you just said. Oh my God.
We were talking about 3 stages of development.
Right, and then I forget.
Conscious yourself.
Yeah. About I can't think of it. One of them I was thinking about was you were talking about your servant, and I don't know if people realize that your brain is also your servant. And I was thinking about that when I'm trying to memorize verses of Quran. If I just read the Quran, even in Arabic, over and over again, I may not memorize it. But if I say, listen, I'm going to memorize this, and then I start memorizing, it's like people don't realize you control this. You turn it on to make yourself start doing it, which means it's your servant. Allah says, well, the Prophet says the letters of all words are the servants of Allah. So they do their rights, and that almost reminded me of what the other thing I was going to say. I can't remember what it is right now. What about Emir? Should we have one Emir or Emir for different places and different areas?
Well, we have Emirs all over the place. We should have Emirs all over the place. I have a grandson that his name is Amir, and I call every time I see him. I say, "Commander." Amir is the commander.
Right.
And he looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" But I had to tell him what it is because I wanted to know that the name that he has means something, and something that you can strive to live up to. And he said it's pretty good. But we have Amirs all over the place, right? As individuals. They are commanders, and we see it in the military, we see it in business, we see it in our families. In our homes, we are the imam, but we are also the Amir. Right? You are the commander, I think. You don't have to be, but I think. And Allah tells us we are the maintainers and providers and protectors of our women. Right? So,
I want to ask the Imam something.
Well,
do you think, like in North America here, our association needs to have?
I don't know.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. As an Emir for North, you said North America?
Yeah, I mean, in our association.
In our association, I kind of think so.
Okay.
So how you doing, brother? I kind of think so because of the things we lost when we transitioned. I was talking to a group of Muslims. We were talking about a central figure. That's how it gets people all in one direction. But I haven't come to a conclusion on that. But I do see how there's one figurehead saying this is what we all should do in the direction we should move in. Because right now, I think a lot of us are. Imam Warafdin Muhammad told us to be autonomous, and we are too autonomous. I think that's the reason we're doing the work we're doing now to communicate with each masjid and kind of get some best practices so everybody can work together. But if we did that initially and everybody did it together, everybody would probably be progressing in the same speed, I think.
Can I add something to that? Can I add something to that? I think we're growing into having one leadership. I think we're growing into having one leadership, and that leadership is this Quran, is this message. But I know what you're talking about.
You're talking about the actual person.
Yeah,
On the physical plane.
I know.
Yeah.
So see, that's a part of where we've grown from, and we just have to accept that that's where we were. That's what we really, really cherished. We have actually grown to a new leadership, which is not to look to one of us, but to look to the example that Allah has put before us as our leader.
That's why I'm indecisive. That's exactly why. It's because I think that we can all have individual leaders in different regions and different communities. I said in a khutbah a couple of weeks ago that there's no imam in Suffolk. There's no imam in Portsmouth, right? If we think of it as we have enough knowledge and we have the ability to lead prayer, then more people will be more inclined to be the leader, to be the imam. One thing that he mentioned, I was thinking about when he said the Khalifa is the community is. I'm not an imam if there's nobody following me. If it's just me, then I'm just a Muslim praying. So you do need the entire community, but I'm not sure also how we get under one leadership without people and their maybe their egos, maybe saying I know more than him. I don't see how that can ever. People will say, all right, I'm just going to follow this one Amir. Do you think that is possible?
Well, you have to be assured. In other words, it can't be that way.
If it's assured, still, you know what's going to happen? I think is the people who's like, well, okay, all of us, a bunch of them are going to go here. They go to what they're sure.
Click over here and a click over here. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So getting back to what Aaron said, that's the only truth. That's the only reality.
Right.
That's what I think. We let the Quran.
Yeah, that's what I see we have grown to. Yeah. And a lot of us, like we're in the womb and we're kicking, and the mama, which is the environment, is feeling these kicks, you know. But we don't know that it's almost time for us to be that independent. For that one, you kick it out of the womb. For us, it's coming away from that having to have an individual person. Not that locals don't have an imam or don't need an imam, because Allah tells us, "Ati'u Allah, ati'u Rasul, wa ulul amri minkum." Right? Yeah. You worship Allah, you believe in Allah, you accept Allah, you accept His messenger, and because you elect the person to lead you, you support him. It's kind of escaping me. The English is escaping me, but you have to. That's why I say every time I get here, I'm not doing enough. We have a record of not supporting our leaders. We put them in place and don't support them. No, seriously.
Oh yeah.
I mean, these communities could be way further ahead if we would support our communities, and by that I mean, find your place. Put it under the structure, under the imam that we elect, and go for it. There's a lot of energy in this area, but it's languishing. This brother, younger than me, younger than most of us, you don't want to be called young anymore.
Everybody.
But,
so old. I'm just young girl. Yeah, that's how I said. He already did it. But I was going to say amen. I'm going to say hallelujah here. exactly I really want to. I'm glad that you say that. I want to bring that point home. That I try to make it where it's not. I'm not trying to. You have to go through me to do something. If you're doing something halal and you want to have a program here, alhamdulillah, I want you to find your niche and do what is best for this community.
And that's, we can't ask for more than that. I mean, he's saying what we have been taught. Mm-hmm. So, Ati'u Allah, Ati'u Rasul, wa ulul amri minkum. Put our personal business aside. Find something that you can do to help take the community, move the community forward. And everybody has something they want to do.
Right.
We don't have to all do the same thing. You know, the unity of Muslims throughout the world is not everybody living here in the same country. It's ideological. La ilaha illallah first, Muhammad Rasulullah. They believe it wherever they are all over the world. That's one form of unity. I mean, it may not be something that we have worked on yet, but we have the brotherhood from that idea. I'm witness to it when I went to Hajj. I don't know the people, but we were
right.
embraced and got to know each other. And the same thing we should have when we come back home. These ideas unify us, right?
So what you're saying makes perfect sense, and that's why I toil back and forth with it. I think the reason that question has come up now is because of what's going on in Gaza, and it also, I mean, that if we had a central Khalifa who was a righteous Khalifa, right, he would have to be looking out for the best interests of everyone. He still wouldn't know what's happening in America and the difference between what's happening in America and what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Congo and all those things. But I think they're looking to it as we could say, you should go over here and help them. You know, we now, I'm gonna say me personally, I feel that Muslim nations around the world should do much more than they're doing now to help them, right? But we don't have anything aside from the minbar that say you needed to be doing more, you know. So in that sense, I think that's where the question has arisen recently, is that we see conflicts that's happening around the world that Muslims are involved in, and we can't talk to somebody and say, you go fix this, or why aren't you fixing it? Especially the custodians of the Kaaba. I mean, if that's the third holiest city, you should be there helping them. I saw Joe Scarborough talking about Joe Biden doing behind the scenes work to keep Saudi Arabia at bay, so their Saudi Arabia and Israeli communications stay good on good terms. Why is he the influence, not the 2 billion Muslims? We should be saying, listen, I don't care what you have, right, with them, that they are killing Muslims. That's where it comes from. So you can see why it makes sense to everybody. There are emirs all over in different places, because nobody, an emir in Saudi Arabia won't be able to tell us how to be Muslims here or deal with our problems at all. Absolutely. But we also want to be like, listen, you need to help these people or something.
These are your neighbors.
Right.
I mean, if we had neighbors as close as that, I'm sure a lot of brothers would have been gone.
Right, for certain. Especially seeing them during Ramadan killing Muslims. One of the reasons I'm off of social media is because I feel helpless with that situation. And last Ramadan, they were pulling them out of massages and beating them, doing all kinds of things. And this Ramadan is worse because they have a literal war going on with them. It's a helpless feeling, you know. That's why people are like, well, what about a Khalifa? What if we had one? Just my thoughts right off top would be, if we had a model Muslim community, they would be already assisted, and it would basically put everyone to shame. Like Yemen is really putting all the other Muslim nations to shame. Like we're war torn. Saudi Arabia has been fighting us, and we're still doing what we can to help them. If there was a a strong Muslim nation that was strong militarily, economically, and not dependent on Western influences, they would be a pillar or an idea of what a Khalifa, a community looks like that is being led properly. But unfortunately, we don't have one. I think, I've always thought that African American Muslims, and if we can give dawah in this country, we could change this country. If this is the most powerful nation in the world, and that's the propaganda they tell us, right? Right? If it is, but the perception becomes reality. If they think they are, then they move as if they are. The same way people think they're chosen people of God. If you think you're chosen by God, you do things differently. You are able to accomplish some things because you think God favors me more than he favors you. Like my mom. My mom told me I'm somebody special, right? I believe it, even though I'm probably not. I can't run faster than anybody else or whatever, but she told me I'm special. So if America thinks that and we're able to give them dawah, I think we would be able to change the trajectory of history. I know Imam Muhammad said that we are the callers to this deen. I'm not sure. I know Muslims believe it. The large majority of African Americans don't believe it. They don't see it yet. Even some of them who are Muslims. And I bought this book that I'm going to talk to you all about. It's called Toby Muhammad, from the back of the bus to the back of the camel. And it is a very interesting book. Toby Muhammad, Toby Muhammad, from the back of the bus to the back of the camel, talking about from leaving the back of the bus, now you go into Islam, and you go to the back of the camel instead of leading. And it's a very interesting book. It is being with my father outside of Imam Muhammad's community and coming back, I can see so clearly what this Toby Muhammad is and what it means. And when I read the book, it's like I live this. I almost was entrenched in this thing. Luckily, my father didn't go all the way with it. He didn't take beyond to some sheikh in another country. He was close, but not close enough to do that. And I was a kid, so I probably would have been following him. But it speaks to the African Americans' plight, and the African Americans still trying to find themselves, and they find themselves by what he calls it is cultural apostasy, erasing their culture and taking someone else's. And what we're talking about right now, we're talking about Gaza, right? And in the book, he's talking about an imam, the African American Muslim will be talking about what's going on in Pakistan, what's going on in Palestine, what's going on here or there, and not realizing that imam is Pakistani. That's why he got you talking about Pakistan, right? But we, the African American Muslim that is not in our association, all the ones outside of our association don't say anything about the African Americans' plight. Right. They also think that, maybe education is not the way to go, even though the immigrant Muslim is educated, they're doctors, teachers, lawyers, and they practice their deen. You can do both, the dunya or the akhirah. The dunya and akhirah, when we think that outside of our association we got to wait till the hereafter to get good, which is what they told us in slavery. That's why this book is so important, because it's like you just exchange Christianity for Islam, and you use the version of Islam where you are excluded. Right. That's why it was important when he was talking about the ethnicity of people. Mm-hmm. Inshallah, next Ta'aleem, I'm going to do the Ta'aleem that I did in Memphis because it speaks to the miraculous nature of the Quran. It also speaks to the complexion of the people. So the story that it was about Yusuf. And it talks about Yusuf. And when you know about the story of Yusuf in the Quran and the Bible, you see how miraculous this Quran is. But that's where I met the brother. He that wrote the book. I'd met him before in Atlanta, and then I met him in Memphis. He was like, "You got to read this book. You'll love it." And I got it. The other day I read it in 2 days. It is. I lived the experience. I lived almost everything that was happening there, and I don't want to say it all now, but it was really insightful. It speaks to that we've always been on the right path in this association. Other people have been on the wrong path. Because it's just the truth. And they are stagnating themselves and stagnating African Americans. They're looking at African Americans outside of being Muslim as kufr, and they're not worthy. I've talked to imams who said, "What you trying to help them for? They're kufr." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, how they gonna be Muslim? You don't care about them. If they know you don't care about, if I knew you didn't care about me, I'm like, I don't care what your religion is, what you're trying to give me. I don't want to hear it. If you think I'm already destined to hellfire." But I want to talk about it because I have the unique experience of being inside of it, then outside of Imam Forty Muhammad's community and coming back, and as older person and the people that I knew said, you know what, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been giving bayan to somebody in Pakistan. I should have been trying to think more about the African American and the plight that's going on here. I should have been thinking about my share of the dunya. Everything that we talk about, every single thing, they divorced themselves of it because they thought they would get more information, more knowledge from somebody who has a thoban. And it's still happening all the time. I mean, even in other communities here, when I go there, I'm like, what are they filling your soul with? You know, they're talking to something different than your plight. You know, they're talking about their own plight. So you're highly upset about what's going on in India, right? And that what's going on right around the corner here.
And it's influencing us.
Right.
Our egos were so crushed during slavery. The Nation of Islam was a godsend. I know it was all divine. It was all divine. I knew that. Because we need to be pulled up and think, we need to think we were better, not just on equal. We need at the time to think we were better than somebody. You know, I've seen, and there's so many communities in Philadelphia that these brothers, they got staffs, they walk around and throw them. If they had a camel, they want a camel. They really.
I'm going to turn this up because I got something I want to say to you.
I'm
going to turn this right off so I can say what I say without offending anybody.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. They look at me like, I don't have to give you the